Welcome to Skye's Sweaty Record Review number 11. As promised all week, I am finally going to get to Lil Wayne's album, The Carter 5. First off, I should note that I am not actually a Lil Wayne expert, for reasons I will explain soon. I'm not that familiar with The Carter 1 through 4, but I have been familiar with his work, and I want to talk a little bit about how that's been over the years and how that's progressed. First off, I want to talk about Barack Obama. Lil Wayne is one of the few rappers that Barack Obama actually directly mentions in any of his speeches. I found these right before recording here. In 2008, he said, "You're probably not that good a rapper. Maybe you are the next Lil Wayne, but probably not. In which case, you need to stay in school." Which got great laughter. 5 years later, after re-election, Obama says at the NAACP dinner, "They might think they've got a pretty good jump shot or pretty good flow, but our kids can't all aspire to be LeBron or Lil Wayne." Now, this latter quote is actually featured on the album The Carter by Lil Wayne, the actual quote from Obama. And I think, it's funny. He's bragging, showing that the president talked about him. But I also think we could sort of see it as a way to talk about hip-hop itself. Because a lot of my resistance to Lil Wayne was my resistance to his outward appearance. So when he became really popular at the end of the early 2010s, late 2000s, I just saw him and he had all these tattoos on his face and he had the dreadlocks and he mumbled and he was kind of sing-songy and he ritually abused codeine and prescription drugs and rapped about it in all of his songs. And I just sort of thought, that isn't really interesting to me. I don't really like it. But what I've seen is that, and what we've all seen, is that this has actually become like a new archetype. Like he created something out of this persona to the point where, much like, the B-boys in the East Coast in the early 1980s or the gangster rappers in LA in the late 1990s, this becomes a certain type of hip-hop artist. The tattooed, dreadlocked, mumbling, codeine addict is one of the main tropes that's right now in hip-hop. But, when Obama was telling those kids to stay in school, maybe they're not as good as Lil Wayne, I feel like he could have also been talking to a lot of the rappers that are on the radio now. I mean, if you listen to Designer or Future or any of these kind of mumble-rapping trap beat artists, it's interesting, and they have all these outside trappings of Lil Wayne, but they don't have any of his brilliance. And that's what really shines on The Carter 5. He's just a brilliant, brilliant rapper. I mean, he's clever on a level that is really hard to even comprehend. I mean, just, every time I do these reviews, I listen to them one time, and that's it. But I want to listen to this again and again just to try to catch it. On the very, first track, the first track is his mother crying about how great he is, which I could do without. But the next song is called Don't Cry, maybe a reference to his mom earlier. And the lyrics are just astounding. They're a little bit maudlin. It appears as though he's actually rapping about sadness, which is one of the themes of the record. But he just goes on, and he talks, and a lot of the record is drenched in themes of death and self-reflection. And he does it, and I can't do it justice. Like, you, A, have to listen to the song, okay, called Don't Cry. And then B, if you don't understand anything, you have to go to Rap Genius and look at the lyrics. Because each line, he's got that crazy stutter step. And what he does is, he takes you down a lyrical line, and then he jukes left, and then he jukes right, and then he sort of takes you back to where you were in the first place. So that you expect something to happen, and then he always goes out of the way to do something else. And it's not always just clever. It's often very meaningful. And I think that's the best part of this record. He's always clever, right? That's always been his tendencies. He takes you in a way and then he does something else. In a song called Dedication, a good example of this, he rhymes "awk" 4 or 5 lines in a row. Everything ends with "awk, awk, awk." He talks about, clock and Barack and all these things. And then at the end he goes, "To keep it as solid as a," you know what I'm saying. So in your mind, you're completing the rhyme for him, while meanwhile, he takes that to launch off into a whole new set of rhymes based on saying. So while you're listening, you're doing his work for him while he takes you in a whole new area. It's just, I don't know, it's fascinating and really amusing to listen to. So it's got all that clever part, but it's not always just clever. Sometimes it's like, because I mean the danger with something that's clever is that it becomes too precious and too cute. So there's a track called Open Letter, which is, you could just basically call it existential wailing into the void. I mean, it's a really crazy song about death and about confronting himself. And he talks about himself, and he uses the line, "The object in the mirror is more near than it appears. Oh shit." And then later, "Why am I here?" Now, on the one hand, you're like, oh, okay, object in the mirror is closer than it appears. But why has no one ever said that about the mirror in the bathroom, about confronting yourself? I mean, why did he think of that first? And he did, as far as I know. And then it keeps on going, and later he says, what is your life expectancy when you don't expect shit? So it's this kind of cute thing where it's like life expectancy when you don't expect, but then it's also this real question where he's trying to figure out himself and what is his meaning. And in this song, he directly asks, why am I here? Now, it's not all this kind of, now it is a very long album, super long, too long, way too long. But well, do you know why I know it's too long? Because I couldn't listen to all of it. Like, I was 30 minutes into my workout, and I looked, and I had like less than like half the album listened to. And there's a bunch of kind of flat spots on the album, songs to just skip. But the high points are really worth it. As an example, the song Uproar. The song Uproar is produced by Swizz Beatz. And this is kind of neat because this took me back to my introduction to Lil Wayne. So I first, I got introduced to Lil Wayne like most people did back in 99, 98, 99, 2000, when he was a part of the Cash Money Millionaires, with Juvenile and the whole crew down in New Orleans. And in 2000, I went to a concert that was the Rough Riders and the Cash Money Millionaires. So that was DMX and Eva and Swizz Beatz, the guy who produced this song in 2018, and then the Cash Money Millionaires. And it's kind of a weird concert. I went with my ex-girlfriend and my future ex-wife, kind of a whole story there. But it was amazing because it was like this New York sound of Swizz Beatz and then this southern sound of the Cash Money Millionaires all getting together at the Fleet Center in Boston. And so this track is this weird kind of callback. Swizz Beatz, he's one of the primary architects of modern hip-hop sounds now. Very rough, energizing, sparse, minimalist beat, which is what dominates hip-hop. And that's going. And then you have Lil Wayne with his amazing lyrical brilliance over it, and it's a very energizing song. So if you want to actually work out harder as opposed to contemplate your own existence, Uproar is the track for you. Another highlight is a track called Mona Lisa, which is with Kendrick Lamar. And it's funny because apparently this album was recorded in 2014 and then legal difficulties pushed it off until now. So in some ways it's like a time capsule, before everybody completely ripped off Lil Wayne and ruined everything that he did that was good. Anyways, that was not a good impersonation. So the song Mona Lisa, it's interesting, right? Because it's a pretty misogynist song about how you can't trust women and why you can't trust women. But there's this one verse that Lil Wayne has, the story of someone called Liz. And he talks about using this woman to rob someone else. And it reminds me of like early Eazy-E or something. It's like a story of somebody doing something really bad. Like I wouldn't want my kids to listen to this because it's all about robbing somebody and probably killing them and using women and all that stuff. But the efficiency of the storytelling, the plays on words, you just have to listen to it. And you can listen to it and say, oh, Skye, the message is bad and this is terrible. That's true. But it is an amazing verse. And then you hear Kendrick Lamar get on. And in the beginning, you feel like, oh my God, Kendrick has been outpaced by Lil Wayne. These are often compared, who's the best rapper. And then the last verse, Kendrick Lamar's second verse, he comes on and he does this entire verse in like he's crying, talking to a woman who's just broken his heart. It's amazing. He's like on the verge of tears the entire time. And he actually finally gets up to match the pace of that Liz verse by Lil Wayne. So that's absolutely a must listen. I would say Mona Lisa, Don't Cry, and Uproar. Those are really the ones to listen to. As I said, there's a lot of interesting self-reflection. There's sometimes it's contradictory, right? Like there's a song called Open Safe, which is one of these really gross sex songs. But then later, like 2 tracks later, he has a song called Perfect Strangers where he talks about being with a different woman every night, but always doing the same thing. And then the stranger is actually that he's a stranger from himself, which is this whole theme that is in so much hip hop, you know, like who am I really? Am I this persona or am I this real person? But he doesn't hide behind, he isn't like Eminem, he doesn't have like 15 personas. It's always him. It's always him in the mirror and trying to figure out who is he. So I would say, what an album. I mean, I was happy to listen to rock and roll all week, but this is amazing. As I said, I didn't listen to him when he was at his peak. So he was at his peak in the late 2000s. And that's when he went to jail. And that was when I first heard people talking about him as being one of the top 5 of all time. And in my mind, I'm like, what, that 18-year-old kid at the Fleet Center who's like jumping up and down with his shirt off, like throwing his t-shirt around his head? I didn't even give him the time of day. Which was to my detriment. So I now apparently have some catching up to do with The Carters 1 through 4. There's so much to say. This review is too long. The album is too long. But it's just wonderful. It is clever. It is personal. And it is, clever, personal, and just awesome. I'm sure I have some kind of catchphrase out of that. Okay, well,